Hi, welcome to the training webinar. I'm Dale Franks. As you can see, there is a new UI for Zoom, which is very confusing, but I think I have figured it out. It looks like we are currently recording. Welcome back to the training webinar. Let's get started real quick because I do want to address what happened last week. When I was going over the new chatbot on the documentation website, unbeknownst to me, the engineering team was playing around with the indexing on the AI in the back end, and it wasn't working the way I expected. As you can see, the indexing has been done, and I'm able to add really terse queries, actually. Business day start and end hours. That's usually not how you talk to an AI. It's usually much more conversational. You don't treat it like it was a search engine. But just before we came on, I ran it through a couple of quick tests, and it does know what business day start and end hours means in terms of the system variables. Same thing, I just put set holiday dates as the query, and it returned the business holiday system variable. System variable for how long an activity has been running is the query that I put in, and it returned activity runtime, and then just apply metadata to a form. So we're back up, we're running. In fact, we were running almost as soon as the webinar was over last week, because basically about the time I ended the webinar, they stopped playing around with the indexing. I think you're going to find this a much better chatbot than the old version. So just keep that in mind. It does appear to be running at 100% at this point, so we are good to go. Today we're going to talk about the template library. This is probably not going to be one of the longer training webinars that we do because it is relatively simple, but despite the fact that it is technically simple, it is quite important. It's important because what it enables you to do is much more easily and quickly build applications if you utilize it correctly. All you really need to make the template library run on your process director installation is to have a template library folder inside the root level of your partition. Now, it has to be named just as it's shown here with the square brackets on both sides of the name. But if you just create a template library folder, then you can begin to create different types of application templates. Now, to get you started, what you're looking at here, except for this one, which we'll talk about in a moment, all the projects that you're looking at here are actually downloadable from our downloads page. So if we go to the support website and go to the Process Director downloads page and you scroll way down here, you will see the BP Logix template library, which you can download as a zip file. You can unload the zip file and it unloads into a PDZ that you can then import onto your system. When you import that PDZ file, you will actually get two folders at the root level. Well, assuming that you import it into the root level of your partition, which is where it is supposed to go, you'll get the two folders, the template data and template library. Now, you don't need the ones that we give you. So if you don't download it, you simply won't get a template data folder. But as long as you have the template library, it'll work. But if you do download the template library and import it onto your system, you will get all of these applications, except, as I said earlier, for the one here at the very top. These are basically sample applications that give you an idea of what a template application looks like. Now, each one of these applications is stored in a parent folder. So this checklist request is actually a folder that contains the application. Here is the actual application for the checklist request. So as you can see, it contains two forms, both a standard form and one created in Bootstrap, an email template, a little Word document with some documentation, a process timeline, and then some extra configuration data, which is a Excel file that contains checklist questions that you can edit. There is a little reports folder in here that just contains a single knowledge view, but the entire application is encapsulated into this checklist request folder. And it is a folder. It doesn't look like one whenever you look in the template library because we're used to seeing the folder icons, and each one of these folders actually has a unique icon for contact us or financial approval or whatever. But don't let that fool you. These are all folders that each contain applications. In addition to that, when you import, you do get this template data folder. This template data folder contains some drop downs and business values and a database connector to the internal database, as well as an Excel file, which lists some groups. Uh, these data items are used by the template applications, and so that's why they're contained there. Uh, they're all reusable. They're used in multiple applications, so that's why they are in their own template data folder. If you don't use our sample applications, you don't need the template data folder at all. It's just that because we created these items like these drop-down content list objects and business values and so forth, because they're directly connected to the applications in the template library, we had and because they're shared applications, we added them in a separate template data folder. Again, the template data folder only matters if you have an object in your template library. We'll talk about how to use these in a second, but I do want to now go and talk about this. Now, I've done an entire webinar on this where I've built this application, so we're not going to go into a lot of detail about the application. If you use the template library for nothing else, you can use it to make your life simpler by simply building an application stub that you'll use to create any new application you need to create on the system. So if we go into this application folder, there's not much in it. There is a business rules folder, which contains nothing. There is a knowledge views folder, which contains nothing. The important part of this is that I've got a form, a timeline, and an email template. And they're already connected together. The associations are already there. And for the form, which is probably the most important part of this, the form applies in this particular case, BP Logic's branding. So I've got our colors and our logo. It also has all the best practice stuff involved in it. So for example, up at the very top, obviously we've got the logo, we've got the form title, we've got the dark blue background for BP Logics. Then I have the embedded section up here that has my running activity and my instructions to display the task instructions and also whatever the running activity name is. I have the 3 standard form fields for submitter, submission date, and request number. And then I've just got an empty section that is all ready for me to begin placing the various controls that I'm going to need on my form to fill out the request. I have my action buttons right there, right above the routing slip on the form. Everything is configured. They all have proper names. If we go back and just look at the form definition itself on the properties tab, we can see that I've got an instantiated form name that is generic in this case, but at least has the 3 fields that we need for searching through a knowledge view, for example, I've got the form fields are enabled only when new form instance, entire form field is read only when timeline status is complete. I've got my connectors to the timeline right here with the automatically start this process and timelines associated with. If we look at the timeline, again, I've got all the basics here. I've got my custom task activity, which calls the set form data custom task to apply the appropriate request number in the appropriate format and set it in the request number field. I've got a generic approval loop already set up. So all you have to do is add additional child approvals inside the approval loop. I've got a final result notification. And obviously, if we look at the options section, I've got form for timeline and default email template in this timeline already set up. And then if we check the email template real quick, well, went up one level too many. If we check the email template real quick, as I said, we get a standard email notification that has all of the basic stuff that makes it work. So I've got my email user system variable to find the name. I've got a hot link control that directs to the email URL so that when you click on the link, it opens up the form and task context. I've provided the task instructions. There is then a email data control. Notice at the top, I do not include the logo, but I do have the little table with the dark blue background and then the title of the email notification. So everything I need to create a basic application is there. So even if in the template library, you decide that you don't need to download it because you don't want all of these extra applications in there, you should create a template library and you should create an application stub. That way, every time you need to make a new application, you can create it. And as we'll see when you create it, I've given the stuff generic names. It's the folder is called application. The email template, form, and timeline are just called that. Now, there's a reason for that, which is that when you create an application from this template, you'll name it, and all of these will be refactored. And we'll take a look at that in just a little bit whenever we start building things. I should tell you that all of the additional applications that we provide, should you download them, are not going to run out of the box. There's some very obvious reasons for that. First of all, we don't know who your users are. We don't know who is going to do what. So like if we open up financial approval and we go into the process timeline, well, I don't actually know who's going to approve what. Now, some things are easy. If I have a submit or resubmittal step like I do here, and maybe we should close the options tab so we can see this whole timeline. So if I have this submitter step, okay, great, that's fine. I can set that to the timeline initiator. For the rest of these, this is set to a group. Should it be set to a group? I don't know. Department approval. This is one that goes through because it's looking at a form field. But for the rest of these, for provost approval, purchasing and procurement, we don't really know who is going to be doing those activities. We have set it to a group, but the group is empty. So there's a lot of configuration that you would have to do for these to customize them to your system. The wise thing to do, if you're going to use our applications, and I should say that our applications were created at a time when we were getting a lot of requests for assistance from higher education institutions. So they are very higher ed focused. So some of these may not work for you, or you'll have to change them fairly substantially. But to the extent that you can, my suggestion would be that you do all of the customizations that you know are going to be standard for all of your applications of, this type, so financial approval. I would suggest that you just go into the template library folder and just edit the templates directly. That way, when you create a new application, all of the customized changes that you made on the template will automatically be included in any application that is created from that template. So there is a question. Is this template with the best practices included in the template library download? If not, could we email you for a copy of it? It is not included in the templates. I think that is I think that's a mistake. I think we should have just put in a really generic template. We didn't do it. So it is not included as part of the templates that you download. If you want this template, email me. I am happy to send you a copy of it so that you will have it. I don't know if I can. I'm kind of curious. Can I, since we're in Zoom, I'm curious, can I attach a file to everyone in the webinar in the chat function? And it does not appear that I can, but that's not a big problem. In fact, while we're here, I'm just going to go ahead and export this template, and I'll export it directly into my downloads folder. And with that, if you email me, I'll just send that template straight to you. All right. So as I was saying, you have all of these applications. They're very generic. Customize them. And if there are anything that you know is going to be used going forward, that's a standard thing that you do, go ahead and put it on these go ahead and put it on these templates. In fact, you might want to just go in. This is an IT request, I guess. So I'm just going to open this IT request form. We're not going to get into the Bootstrap stuff. In fact, I don't even know whether I have re-enabled Bootstrap on this system or not. So I don't even know if that would work for us. But if we look at this form, there's all kinds of things that you might want to do here. Now, notice we do have the request number, request date, and requested by set up here at the top. We've got this image, which presumably is a logo image. Yeah, it is. It points to your logo URL, which is the URL of the logo that you have set on the properties page of installation settings in your IT admin area. But you may want to change this. You may want to change the colors. You may want to add some different text. You may want to change some of these fields. Whatever it is that you would like to do. If it is something that you want standardized for every application of this type, then please feel free to go ahead and do that standardization inside all of the objects in the template library folder. Now, there's nothing special about the template library folder, by the way, other than the name. That's the one special thing about it, because that just identifies to Process Director that this is where all your templates live. Inside this folder, all of these applications are just plain old standard Process Director applications. They don't have any special sauce. They don't do anything different than any other normal application does, but they are just essentially all different types of application stub that have a lot of pre-configured stuff on it. Although, with that having been said, as we've seen, there will be some level of customization that is required. For many of you, you won't find a lot of these applications useful, so don't feel like you have to keep them. Once you install a template library folder on your system, or you just create a folder named template library, it is yours. You have full control over it. You can do whatever you would like to. You don't have to keep any of our stuff at all. You can make your own templates if you want. That's all entirely up to you. It really is very free form, and it's no different than any other folder in your content list, except for the name. And the name is important because the name is where we decide where your templates come from. And so that's the one thing that is kind of hard coded. I should tell you, I do know that some of you do not have a template library. And I know that because I occasionally get tech support tickets that says, hey, I just tried to do whatever, and I saw this little error message that popped up that says it can't find the template library. Well, that's because you don't have a template library folder on your system. Just for general purposes, even if you don't have a template library and you decide that you don't want to use templates, you might want to put a template library folder on your system just for general purposes, because if we go down here, let me close all of this stuff up. So let's go down here to the training webinar folder where we can work. When I want to create an object, I've got this menu as this menu item as the very first item in the create new menu, which is called start from template. If I did not have a template library folder, then trying to run this menu item is going to cause problems because I don't have the folder it requires. It's just going to throw an error. It would be better just to have a blank template library folder on your system than to have it do that. Similarly, if you're on 6.1 or higher and you go to the home page, which either I haven't put the right icons in here or it is not loading properly for whatever. We have in the very middle this create from template, right? So if I hit create, it's going to want to have a template library, and it's going to want to know where my template, what my templates are. And so it's going to look into my template library, and it's going to be looking for all of these items. Again, not sure why we're not seeing these icons, but I think that is a known issue with this version that I have. So please ignore the fact that the Font Awesome icons aren't showing up here as they should. But I have two different ways of creating an application. And so let's go ahead and talk about that. From the home page, if I want to create an application, and so I'll just create, a copy of my generic application stub. So I'm going to select that. It's highlighted in light blue, so it's been selected. I'll hit next. Now it's going to want an application name. So we're just going to type in webinar as I usually do. So we'll call it webinar. And now I've got to select a folder for this particular application. So over here on the right-hand side, I'm going to go into default partition, and I'm going to scroll down and I'm going to select training webinar. And when I select it, it will fill the training webinar out over here on the right, and new subfolder. Now, I want it to exist inside the training webinar folder. The only subfolder I have is my archive. I don't want to stick it in there. I don't want to create a new subfolder. And this is where it gets a little bit confusing, because what's going to happen when it creates my application is it's going to copy the entire application folder to the folder location I selected. So for selecting training webinar, what that means is there is going to be a subfolder automatically created to store this application that is called webinar. So I'm already going to be creating a subfolder. So this new subfolder question trips a lot of people up because they think, well, what this means is I need to create the subfolder where my application will go. No, that's not what it means. It means that if you create a subfolder here, it will certainly create a subfolder, and then it will create your application as a subfolder of that subfolder. So rather than having your application at training webinar / application, it will exist at training webinar / subfolder / in this case, webinar. So you want to be careful about that. Don't invoke the new subfolder. It does say optional, um, but just keep in mind that whenever I create an object via, well, however I create an object, if I create it via a template, it is going to have its own parent folder, which is, of course, how we recommend that you create applications. So now it's telling me everything is ready to go. It's going to be called a webinar, and it's just a generic application template. The destination folder will be training webinar, and I will hit create, and we'll see the creation dialog box. It will say it has been created, and I can go ahead and close. And when I close it, it's automatically going to navigate me back to default partition training webinar. Also note that my email template, form, and timeline have been renamed webinar, email template, webinar form, and webinar timeline. So whatever name that I give my new application is just going to be prepended to the existing object names of the objects in my application. That is why whenever I created my app stub, I simply called it email template, form, and timeline because I knew it was going to add the application name prior to that. So I wanted my names to be, as simple as possible. I will point out that if we go back to the template library and we go to, what doesn't matter which one we go to, financial approval. This is called financial approval form. Whatever name you give your application is going to be appended before financial approval form. Same with financial approval request process. So if I called it webinar when I created the application, my new name would be webinar financial approval request process. These names can get awful long because and of course, if you've given your application a long name, that long name is also going to be prepended to the name of all of the objects that are included in that application. So you might end up with potentially 255 character names for your form and process timeline, which I think at a certain length, the name just gets unwieldy. So you may want to, you feel free to rename any of the forms and stuff in the template library at all, because it doesn't matter what their names are. We're going to prepend the name of your application to them. Now, we just created an application from the home page. That, of course, is not the only way that you create applications. In fact, I suspect that it may not be the primary way that you create an application. Primarily, what you will probably do, because we're also used to working in the content list, and this is certainly the way that I always do it, is what you're probably going to do is you're going to just navigate to wherever you would like to be in the content list. So in this case, I would just navigate to training webinar. I would go to create new, and I would say start from template. Now I'm going to get a little bit of a different screen when I do it that way. What I'm going to see is just a list of all of my different applications. I'm still going to need to name it. So until I name it, I don't have an application. So we'll call it webinar 2. And once again, I'll just pick my application template. And it will give me a warning there that says proceed with creation of template application. Okay, well, that's what I want to do. So I'll go ahead and hit OK. The little spinny will show up here. And then in the fullness of time, a new application will be created. As you can see, this one is called Webinar 2 Email Template Form and Timeline, as it prepends the name to the objects. So all that you need to create and this is why I like the application template, because what it does is it not only makes your life easier. right? I mean, think about to make an application. I know I'm going to have to make at least three things. I'm going to have to make a timeline, going to have to make a form, and I'm going to have to make an email template. And if I don't have a template, that means I got to make them from scratch. And it gets super tedious to have to make the same three objects from scratch over and over and over. And it's not just creating the objects themselves, it's, you know, implementing all of the normal best practices that you want to implement on a form or process timeline. Just the tedium of opening up the form. You open the form, then you got to create a process timeline. If the form exists and when you create the new timeline, you can set the form for timeline. Then you got to close the timeline. You got to reopen the form and you got to set automatically start this process and timelines associated with, and you got to close and save the form. Then you got to create a new email template. And once you've created the new email template, you got to, even if you do nothing, you close it, then you got to go back to the timeline and open it up and set up the email template. That is a long, tedious process that you have to do every single time you create stuff from scratch. So the nice thing about the templates is that they can save you a lot of time on a basic application. Now, the template that I created for this one, I mean, I don't even know what you're going to be doing with it. I have no idea what kind of application that you have or that you're going to create. So it's very generic and I can do basically anything with it. In fact, all of my user activities are still set to timeline initiator. It literally could not be simpler than this. But there is a reason why in the template library, we gave you all of these different types of applications. It's because in your organization, there are probably certain departments that do things in a specific way, and they have specific types of approvals that they do. And so they need their own sort of semi-customized template that's rather different than just a generic template. For example, speaking of higher ed, I happened to be in the production server for a higher ed customer today, and I noticed that, and they've had some implementation issues, or they've done some things that they probably shouldn't have done. So we're sort of helping them get everything fixed up and get on track with configuring things the way they probably should be configured. And so I've been in there fairly frequently over the last couple of weeks. And so I noticed this is a higher ed institution, right? And so they have individual colleges, like, the College of Agriculture or Veterinary Medicine or whatever it may be. And as you dig in to each of these different colleges, they tend to have specific types of applications that tend to go to the same specific approvers for these different things. They have their own processes. So the nice thing about the template library is if you have a setup like that, where different portions of your organization, HR is always a great example of this. HR does sort of specialized work. And there are several different types of processes that HR controls and runs, but all of those processes tend to have some things in common. For example, they tend to go to the same approvers inside the HR section who need to perform certain actions. And so with that, you might just want to create an HR template in addition to just sort of a generic, this can be anything application template. You might want to create an HR template that kind of encapsulates the normalized workflow operations and approval operations that they do, so that, again, if HR comes and says, hey, we need a new form to do X, then you can just use that HR template and it will not be completely customized. It won't be, ready to use out of the box, but it will have all of those unique items that only appear in HR types of applications. It'll have all that stuff in it. And so that's one of the reasons why we created all of these applications. They're all kind of different applications. Now, I happen to think that registration request is probably too specific, especially for higher ed. You're just going to register for a class. Everybody's going to do the same registration. There generally aren't a whole bunch of different types of registrations you do. This just seems more like a standalone app than a template to me. I think one of the ways to understand what was in our minds when we built these applications is that we're just trying to give you samples. So they're not templates as much as they are kind of samples of what a template for an app would be. So you will have to take some of these with a grain of salt, because some of these are so specific that you wouldn't use them as a template to create multiple applications. This is kind of what the application would be if you created it. So just keep that in mind if you're thinking about grabbing the templates that we have. Now, some of them are very generic. The checklist request template is super generic. What it enables you to do is create your own checklist via an Excel file. And based on that checklist, it's going to go through and it's going to change the data you see on the form. It's going to change how the process timeline works. And it's any time that you need to have to run through a checklist in a process. Okay, this is a great template for that. On the other hand, equipment, CAB room reservation, that's pretty much a standalone app. I suppose that you might have different apps to reserve different resources, although there's no particular reason to do that. If you're going to open up Outlook and reserve any room in your organization, I'm not sure why you couldn't do the same with a single app. But in any event, just keep that in mind when you're looking at these apps. Some of these are more suited to being a template than others. And it may be that none of these are useful to you really. And if you want to just delete them all, that's fine too. You can create your own template apps, for HR, or if you're higher ed, for the bursar's office, or whoever. For your sales team, you might have a sales type process, and so you make a sales application. The other thing that you can do is, for those of you who want this application or who want to create your own application, once you have this base application, there's nothing magical preventing you from exporting it and then re-importing it and making changes to it, or just you don't ever want to use copy. So the best thing to do would be to export your generic basic application, import it into another location somewhere on your system, make whatever changes you want to make to it to create a customized, again, let's go back to HR. I want to create a customized HR application template because I know that there are certain things that HR is always going to do. I just want to include that in the process so that I don't have to recreate it every time. And so you put all the stuff that is going to be reusable in that new application. Then you can rename it, obviously. Don't call it application. Rename the parent folder to HR template and then export it. And then you can just come right back here to the template library and import your new HR template application, and it will just import straight in. It's very important, if you're going to be creating your own application templates, that you have a single parent folder and that everything that application uses goes into that parent folder. That's why I have the subfolders for business rules and knowledge use. The only three things I have at the root level of the application folder is my email template form and timeline. The other thing that's important to remember, and that's going to make your life using templates a lot easier, look at these other folders that we have at the root level. This is where all of my global objects should live. All of my business rules that can be used by multiple applications should live in their own business rules folder. Again, note, all of these folders have square brackets in the name. All of my business values should live in this folder, just as all of my custom tasks do live in that folder. This is super important because if I put my global objects in these folders, that means that I can reference them from here, from my application folder. And when I create my new application and it gets stuck way down here in the training webinar folder, whenever it comes across one of those global objects, it's going to look way back up here and it's going to try to find those objects inside these folders during the import. And if all of your global objects are in these folders, then it's going to find them and it's going to import seamlessly. So it is important that all of your global objects, so business values, data sources, drop-down content list objects, business rules that can be called by multiple processes. Business rules are always the tricky one because a lot of your business rules don't make any sense if you run them outside the context of a specific application. So we would call those local business rules. Those should stay with your application because no other application can use them. But some business rules are global. Any application can use them. For example, if we go into my business rules folder, we'll take VP of operations. Okay, so this is about as global a business rule as you can find. It does one thing. It returns a user. In this case, Barb Stanley. Barb Stanley is apparently my VP of operations. So when I assign a task to VP of operations, it's always going to be assigned to Barb Stanley because I can assign tasks by business rule. And if Barb Stanley leaves or needs to be replaced, all I got to do is come in, change this business rule to Diana or Eric instead of Barb, and now all new task assignments will go to them. So this is a global business rule. Also, parameterized business rules are almost always global, right? This business rule has a parameter called stuff. So as long as I pass a value to stuff, then it is going to return, well, in this case, it's expecting stuff to contain either hello or bye. So if stuff equals hello, then it's going to return the text, well, hello yourself. So this is almost all parameterized business rules are global business rules because all they care about is the parameter value they get sent, and they operate based on that parameter value. They don't care what your form fields are or anything like that. So parameterized business rules are also global. But there are some things that are just always global. Data sources, always global. Now, my machine is a bad example of data sources because I do all these different webinars and they all need their own data, and people will ask me to export the webinar, and all of my exported webinar will not work without its data sources and data and stuff like that. So I have a lot of data sources spread out all over my system. However, on your system, that should not be true. On your system, your data sources should all go here. Now, I have multiple copies of the same data source. That's an artifact of some other things that I do for my job that requires different versions of it. In fact, I have the same data source, and this is something that you might do too. I have the same data source that, like, here's a data source called internal DB. It just gives me the entire internal DB. and so does internal DB global. So I should not actually have two of these data sources. I should have internal DB and internal DB global. Now, the reason why I do is because at one point, internal DB only looked at some tables. And at some point, it became so frustrating to me that I created internal user DB global and started using it. And then I realized there was no reason to have these two. And every time I tried to use internal DB, it still wasn't giving me what I wanted for my tables. And so I finally, in frustration, just deselected all of the tables so it would return everything. But of course, then it was too late to delete internal user DB global. I should not have two of these data sources. I should have one internal DB data source. Wait a second. No, wait a second. That's internal DB. Oh, these are different. These are different. One is my internal user database, and one is my internal database. So the internal DB global wasn't coming off of this one. It was coming off of one of the others that I have in here because I have a whole bunch of them. And I'm not sure, was it training? It could be training data source. Yeah, that's internal user database. So maybe it was the training data source. And I have SQL data source, which is also internal user database. I have SP test, which is also, so don't do like I do. Don't create the same data source over and over and over. If you have a data source to your internal DB and your internal user DB, then fine. You only need one of those, but you may need a file data source or a SharePoint data source, or obviously if you have compliance data sources, you may need a ton of different client data sources because you may need to be able to specify different OAuth tokens and token secrets, or different usernames and passwords for different APIs that you access. And so you might need a whole bunch of compliance data sources and other to access those objects. We're getting way off track here from templates. I'm just finding useful bits of knowledge, I think, as I look through things here. The key feature is global objects go in these global folders. Now, we consider these system folders. So you do have in the content list this toggle system folders, which turns them off. I generally do keep them turned off unless I'm actually having to use them, so that I only see my part of the content list that actually has the stuff that I use on a day-to-day basis. But you can always turn them on and off by looking at them. They do take up a lot of space, so they are really inconvenient to keep on all the time. At this point, I've got all of these folders. It's just a lot easier for me to turn them off and not look at them until I need to look at them. But they're a vital part of your system, and that is where your template library is going to reside. As I said, this is going to be one of the shorter training webinars, so I don't have anything else for you. Now, we still have another hour and 15 minutes, so if anybody has any questions or anything else that they want to talk about, I'll be happy to go ahead and talk with you about that, and we'll kind of do sort of an office hours thing. But for now, the recorded portion of the webinar is going to end, and I will see everybody. Keep in mind, I'm not ending the webinar for all of you. I'm just ending the webinar for YouTube. So bye-bye, YouTube people. I'll see you again soon. For everybody else, well, maybe we'll talk. Stick around. We'll see what you have to say.